Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to my tier list for Wild Rift patch 5.2D. This is the final patch of the 5.2 cycle, so there are going to be some changes, and also we got the rework coming in for KAYLE. We also got to talk about MILIO because I haven't done anything about MILIO yet in terms of the tier list and what I think of him, and also all of the changes as well. So let's head straight into it. First up in the Baron lane to start things off. Few champions entering the S+ tier. As I mentioned in my patch notes yesterday, I think the Ornn buff itself was just unnecessary. I think the Ornn was in a already good spot. Now I think he's in a crazy strong spot. He already had so much tankiness and so much crowd control already. Now you give him so much extra damage in terms of base AD damage, the first ability and the second ability damage going up, which is just absolutely bonkers in my opinion. Not too sure why they did that, but I think the Ornn is in a really good spot now. Just a very safe champion to play in the Baron lane with the likes of Maokai as well. Maokai still performing very well in the Baron lane as a tank. Set as well, again, base AD buff in the early game for a bruiser like Set, who is already pretty strong in the early game in terms of trading potential and everything as well. Again, I feel like he is definitely going to be moving up into the S+ tier, and I think he's going to be very strong this patch. Mordekaiser is still very strong. Surprised he didn't get tweaked or nerfed ever so slightly. He does seem very powerful right now. Again, that's probably because of his ultimate, being able to isolate the carry on the enemy team into a 1v1. And Mordekaiser, being that tanky bruiser that he is, sometimes can be a bit difficult to kill. And obviously, if he gets that kill, if Mordekaiser gets the kill, he's able to steal all of the stats away. So very strong, very safe champion again to play in the Baron lane. And then you have the likes of Aatrox and Darius, which in terms of bruisers, they're both very aggressive. They both trying to want to get early game advantages, especially Aatrox as well. I think Aatrox, with his little bit of crowd control he has, his sustain that he has during the laning phase, just way too difficult to deal with. And obviously Darius with the outplay potential with his ultimate and with being able to pull enemies towards him, again, makes him pretty damn strong. Into the S tier, few champions moving up and few champions moving down. Renekton moving down into the S tier. I just feel like at the moment Renekton can't really get the same early game advantage as what he normally would be able to do. I moved him from S+ tier to S tier. It doesn't mean that he's bad at all. He's still a very good champion to play. You can still try and get early game advantages, but in general, I just don't think he can get them same sort of advantages. Wukong did receive a buff a patch or two ago. I didn't change him, but now I'm going to move him up from A to S tier. I think that the buffs to his first ability gives him a lot more trading power during the laning phase, and it does make him a bit stronger. In terms of the rest of the S tier, everything is pretty much stayed the same. Garen, because he's super easy to play and really strong as well. Shen with his split pushing, being able to ultimate whenever he wants to. Akali as an assassin, doesn't do too well during laning phase, but scaling is just extremely powerful. Oh, Riven as well. Riven I also moved down from S+ tier to S tier. Again, another champion I just feel like can't really do too well in the Baron lane. Probably has a lot more better advantages and a lot more easy access in the jungle in terms of ganking. Camille and Jax, two other bruisers in the Baron lane that can still perform very well. And then we also have Urgot as well up in the S tier. Moving down into the A tier, I moved Jace down from the S tier down into the A tier. I think Jace is a lot better as a mid lane champion. The problem with Jace in the Baron lane is when you come up against these tanks and these tanks and these bruisers, Jace can't really burst them down, whereas when he plays in the mid lane, most likely you're going to be against other AD assassins or just mages in general, which he can actually take that to his advantage. So that's why Jace is going to be moving down in the Baron lane, but you'll see a bit later on that Jace stays the same in the mid lane just because how much pressure he can build in the mid lane. Again, in terms of the rest of A tier, nothing else has really changed. Everything is pretty much stayed the same. I believe I also moved Yone down from S tier to A tier. I believe I did. I'm trying to remember the changes that I did now, but I believe Yone was in S tier, moving down into A tier. Both the brothers are in A tier at the moment. They're both solid to play, not that crazy powerful, but both pretty solid. Still got likes of Teemo here as well, which could be super annoying in the Baron lane. Kennen, early game pressure, I'm really strong. Again, a few other tanks, Sion, Malphite, Gragas, Dr. Mundo. I don't think they're as strong as the other tanks we have. Also Volibear as well. I don't think they're as strong as the other tanks we have. Volibear might be a bit underrated. There have been many times that I've been playing against Volibear with Heartsteel, which is just super annoying to deal with and really difficult to kill. Just becomes super tanky with the build that he can go for. So maybe he's a bit underrated, but keeping him in the S tier for now. And also Gwen, the scaling with Gwen can definitely be there. And you can get a lot of power in the late game when it goes on. Obviously Fiora, again, I kind of predicted this to happen, but she's just falling out because split pushing is just no longer really a thing, and it's really difficult to do anything in team fights. B tier, move Vladimir down, same as what I was talking about with Jace. These are just two champions that I just struggle in the Baron lane. Vladimir is more of this scaling champion that actually doesn't want to do too much in terms of pressuring in the early game, but more wants to scale and have that sort of safer lane to play against, which the mid lane definitely is. You can just stay underneath the tower. You can play a lot safer in the mid lane, whereas in the Baron lane, you might be put under pressure against some of these bruisers and some of these engaged tanks that can do quite a lot of damage. KAYLE, I moved from C tier up to B tier. Now, I'm not really too sure how this KAYLE rework is going to work. You might see in the next few days if I test KAYLE and if I realize that she is stronger or she's just the same as what she was before. Again, you'll probably have to give it a few days. I do think KAYLE is going to be stronger than what she is. It's pretty obvious, you know, second ability getting buffed, first ability getting buffed, ultimate getting buffed because you can use your abilities and your auto attacks. And also you can now fully ascend at level 13. So there is a way that KAYLE is going to get stronger. Whether she's going to be strong enough to be viable, you know, she still has to wait until level 13 until she reaches her kind of end game and her kind of power spike. So we'll have to wait and see. I have to move her up. I don't think she's going to be C tier anymore. I think she's going to be fairly decent, but not that strong. The other champions in B tier are just not that strong right now. Obviously, Irelia is super difficult to play and also just isn't doing too much in terms of damage. Nasus takes way too long to scale. Pantheon, Olaf and Trendemir with Singed down in the C tier because Singed in general just doesn't really offer anything to anyone, not anything to his team or anything to himself. Moving into the jungle, Rengar is up in the S+ tier. Still, I actually don't remember if I had him in the S+ tier. Actually, no, my last tier list, I had him in the A tier or S tier because I knew that he was going to be strong, but I didn't think he was going to be this strong. I mean, I think Rengar is incredibly powerful right now. I think he's one of the best carry junglers to go for. He can one-shot anyone pretty much on the map once he gets ahead. The crit build that you can go is very, very strong. Again, very, very powerful. He's going to be in the S tier. Gragas as well, also in the S+ tier. Has taken a bit of time to kind of, for people to kind of get used to being able to use the likes of the first ability with the body slam now, and also the burst damage potential that Gragas brings. But because this burst damage, because of the ultimate and the outplays that you can make with Gragas, very, very strong jungler to play. Lilia still up there in the S+ tier as well, whether you play Electrocute or Conqueror, both are very, very strong. Xin Zhao as well, also up there with Lee Sin. Bit more on a difficult side with Lee Sin, with being able to carry, but still one of the strongest junglers out there. In the S tier, Rammus has moved up from A tier up to S tier. We are definitely in a sort of AD meta and still in terms of everyone's playing level tempo AD carries at the moment. So very, very good. Very, very good to play Rammus against them. Obviously, people playing the likes of Rengar still in the jungle, Xin Zhao, Lee Sin, all these bruisers, which again, Rammus does pretty well against. And also bruisers are still very strong in the Baron lane, with potentially even AD champions being played in the mid lane. So once you're against, I would say 3 or 4 AD champions at least, then you can definitely pick up Rammus and be that main carry for your team. Even though you are a tank, you can still do quite a lot of damage because of the refractive damage that you deal with the likes of Thornmail. Everything else in the S tier, I moved Jarvan up as well. Jarvan in terms of his bruiser build, I don't really like his one-shot build. I don't think there is really any point to his one-shot build, but just the lockdown that you can get with Jarvan just works incredibly well. In terms of other champions, I don't think I've changed anything else. Kayn, blue or red form, both are pretty decent at the moment. Maybe I should move Kayn down, actually. I'm not really too sure. Viego, still decent. Maybe not as strong as what he is now because of his crit damage being nerfed, but you can still go for the on-hit build. Kha'Zix, Talon, still 2 really strong assassins. Maokai or Amumu, if you want to play more tanky champions as well. Amumu is probably one of the easiest and best champions to play in the jungle right now. Vi for a lockdown, and then Riven and Aatrox in terms of their bruiser carry potential. In the A tier, I've moved Hecarim down. Hecarim just doesn't really do too much. He's kind of like a running, just a stone wall of pretty much death. Like he doesn't really do anything. He just runs around. He tries to knock you into a team, or he tries to use his ultimate to try and fear you. But after he does that, he doesn't really do that much damage, unfortunately. Not really that tanky at the same time as well, but still a pretty decent champion to play. That's why he's not down in like the B tier. You can still pick him up. He's still super easy to play. Still got lights of the burst champions, like Nautilus is still very strong as a burst champion. Diana, Echo, Fiddlesticks, all really, really strong. Evelyn has plummeted off the face of the earth, really. I feel like Evelyn is just definitely not as strong as what she was before. She just doesn't do as much burst damage since her nerf that came in. But in general, every champion in the A tier is still pretty decent. You can still perform pretty well. And then you have champions in the B tier as well. The kind of unique champions like Jace, Camille, Fiora, Shen, even though you want to most likely play these champions in either the mid lane or the Baron lane. And also champions that are just not that strong in the jungle right now. Warwick, Trendemir, Olaf, Gwen, even Zed as well, sitting down in the B tier for junglers. So more of like the unique champions that might be able to perform, but maybe not as well as some of the other champions above. Into the mid lane, S plus tier hasn't changed at all. Jace still in the mid lane. As I mentioned in the Baron lane, Jace has a lot more potential to carry in the mid lane. Kassadin with his scaling, still incredibly powerful. Ahri as well with her pick potential. I've done a video on her recently, which kind of shows the power that you can bring with the likes of Psychic Wave and Powered Attack and her pick potential. And also Yasuo in the mid lane as well. Again, with his more tankier build, you can go for his more carry build. Whatever one of these two builds you go, very, very powerful. S tier, Syndra is getting buffed. I'm not too sure if Syndra is going to be S plus tier worthy. The only really thing that they kind of buffed is her ultimate. They didn't buff anything else about her. Her passive also got a little bit of a buff. Don't think she's going to be S plus tier. I think she's just going to kind of stay in the S tier for now. In terms of other mages, you have the likes of Ziggs, Lissandra. I was talking about in a video before, which if you're against any assassins or any champions that like to dive on top of you, the likes of Yasuo, the likes of Kassadin, Lissandra can be a great counter. Zoe and also Morgana. I've moved Morgana up into the S tier. I played her quite a bit because I did a video on her and I kind of realized that this champion is just kind of too easy to play, and I still kind of stick to the fact that she doesn't really offer too much in terms of team fights or maybe just in the game in general, but with just how easy she is to play, and when you do land a dark binding or you do just kind of use your second ability as kind of a zoning control, it can be pretty annoying to play against and it can be pretty strong. Then you have the assassins, the likes of Akali, Yone, and also Corki as well, still sitting up in the S tier. Down to the A tier, I've moved Akshan back down into the A tier from the S tier. I thought that this champion was going to perform better after the buff, so that's why I moved him up into the S tier. Unfortunately, still not that strong. I think it's just to do with the build in general and just with how the game works right now. The ADCs in the mid lane are just no longer a thing, so unfortunately Akshan is down there. The only other champion I was thinking the A tier to move up is actually Zyra. You'll see my support tier list a bit later on that I've moved Zyra up in the support tier list. So I think Zyra in general, after a buff a few patches ago, I think that she is definitely stronger. She does a lot more damage now, which is really, really nice. Kind of skill shot heavy, but still can make it work. Then A tier, you've got kind of the rest of the kind of assassins that assassins are very difficult to play in the mid lane just because you're melee champions. But if you do get ahead and if you can get the right trades in the early game, then you can use that to your advantage. Likes of Echo, Diana, Zed, even Gragas as well. These kind of burst assassins, Fizz, you can still perform really well. And the other mages like Veigar, Annie, Vex, these other weaker mages, which can still be fairly okay. And again, I moved KAYLE from C tier to B tier. I don't want to overestimate her buff and rework and be like, oh my god, she's going to be completely broken. Boom, KAYLE moves all up into S plus tier. No, I'm not that sort of person. I will move her up one rank because I feel like that's probably what she's going to move up. If she performs better, if she's better than what I think, then obviously I'll move her up during the patch itself. So keep an eye out for the tier list because it might be changing over time. And in terms of rest champions on the B tier, just champions that are not really performing that well at the moment in the mid lane. You can kind of look at these champions and realize that, you know, some of these champions are not really just fitted at the moment in the current meta. Obviously, Katarina just gets hit by one bit of crowd control and that's it. Aurelion Sol's scaling is just not there, unfortunately. Talon just can't really do anything in the mid lane right now. Swain, you do have your scaling. You can be a bit tanky. I mean, I would much prefer Swain support over Swain mid, in my opinion, but you can still probably make Swain mid lane work. Galio mid lane just no longer a thing because you kind of want to build tanky as a support. Brand is probably the only question mark that you might be thinking in this mid lane, because in like China, it has like one of the highest win rates in mid lane right now. I don't really know where that's coming from, to be honest with you. Every time I play Brand, this champion just doesn't feel too great. I mean, you just get completely isolated in mid lane. You can't really do anything. Your poke damage doesn't really do too much. And even late game fights as well. Like you just feel useless. You just kind of feel like a worse Morgana, to be honest with you. Like I would much rather have Morgana than a Brand. Also because Morgana has her Black Shield as well. That can also help out. Into the duo lane, I've been testing out quite a few of these AD carries now with lethal tempo. Obviously, with the lethal tempo changes, it's pretty damn good. I mean, new lethal tempo is definitely going to be very, very strong. I think it's going to make AD carries kind of shine again in terms of the extra range that you can get, and also it's making some supports shine again as well, with some, you know, enchanter supports that maybe weren't into the meta too much coming back into the meta because of these lethal tempo changes with the extra range that you're giving is really, really nice. And also MILIO just come into the game in general, you know, makes the likes of KAYLE much stronger, Severe much stronger, Tristana with the scaling, Xayah, Kalista, even Twitch as well, which you can see has moved up from C tier up to B tier. I don't think there's any really C tier ADCs at the moment, to be fair. I think most AD carries can work. If you can fit them with the right support, then it could be really good. Let's talk about S+ tier first though. Varus, I mean, I always put this champion S+ tier because I think Varus is incredibly powerful. It's just weird that every single time that you feel like you're performing well with Varus, you just can't really carry. I don't know. I feel like Varus has received about 10 buffs in the last year, and it still feels like Varus in just win rate in general with win rates, that he's just not performing well. But I think it's just because of him not being an auto attack carry, so he doesn't do a lot of consistent damage. He does a lot of burst damage, so you have to rely a lot on your abilities and land your abilities. If you miss, then you're kind of useless. Caitlyn, very powerful, her incredible range gets increased even more, sorry, because of lethal tempo changes. Severe received a buff, I believe 2 or 3 patches ago, which increased her, I believe it was AD per level, and also the AD on her second ability, which helped her out a lot. Helped her out in terms of a wave clear, also gives her a bit more early game pressure as well, which is really good. And also the scaling with Severe with her ultimate just makes her really, really powerful. Into the S tier, I've moved Ezreal down from S+ tier to S tier. Ezreal's kind of getting the Ezreal treatment again, where there is so much love happening to the other AD carries with this lethal tempo buff, but nothing is happening to Ezreal. I mean, Ezreal received a buff a few patches ago, but in my opinion, Ezreal is just, yeah, it's so difficult for Ezreal to come into this meta when he's very skill shot heavy. He's all about positioning as well, when there's just all these AD carries that can just keep auto attacking over and over again. With the increased range as well, makes it so difficult for Ezreal to even land his skill shots and for him to try and carry games. So that's why he's moved down this S tier. Still a strong champion, still does a lot of damage, but just, in my opinion, not S+ tier. Kalista, mobility, very, very powerful. Xayah still up here as well with Kai'Sa, Zeri, and Tristana. All these late game scaling AD carries are very powerful right now. Lucian is still sitting down in the A tier. You just don't have as much carry potential and as much burst potential in the early game as what you did before with like the rune items. So Lucian unfortunately sitting there. Misfortune's down here as well. Samira, Ashe, Jhin, and Draven. Again, Jhin, even with his buffs, just hasn't really performed that well. Jinx could move up. I still don't think Jinx is that great, to be honest with you. I think there is a lot better late game scaling ADCs that you would rather go instead of Jinx, but I can see Jinx maybe being good with MILIO. Not really too sure. I mean, with Lulu nerfs, this definitely hurts Jinx as well, because Jinx definitely wants a lot of shielding, a lot of survivability, but with the Lulu nerfs coming in, it can be a bit difficult. Neela, Corki, Vayne, and then also Twitch. Again, I moved Twitch from C up to B tier. I think in general, Twitch is one of the best champions you can play with MILIO, which is why I've moved him up. And I think that if you pair Twitch with MILIO, can be incredibly strong. Into the supports, quite a few changes here. Obviously, we have the release of MILIO, which I did originally say that MILIO was like... This is the thing. I think MILIO is like in between S and A tier right now. If I had my like original S+ tier, then it would probably slot in there, to be honest with you. I think MILIO would slot into like the A+ tier, because I don't think MILIO is like S tier, especially in solo queue. I don't think MILIO is S tier in solo queue. I think he's S tier in duo queue, especially if you have a duo queue ADC. If you're playing solo queue, then it's definitely like A. So he's like in the middle right now. But I put him S because I think that it's a pretty cool champion. I think he is pretty strong, because especially because the extra range that he gives, the shielding that he gives, the movement speed, the cleanse with his ultimate as well. Once players get used to MILIO, then I think he's just going to get stronger and stronger. S+ tier though, Maokai and Janna, I have moved Lulu down from S+ tier to S tier. I think the nerf's going to be pretty heavy, especially the ultimate as well. 15 extra seconds on the ultimate is such a big deal for Lulu, and you're just not going to be as strong. So yeah, Lulu sitting down the S tier. I think Janna is the best enchanter right now. Not only does she have a lot of healing and shielding, but she's one of the best peeling supports as well. Her ultimate, her tornado, her second ability for movement speed. Again, I think she's probably one of the best enchanters. Also Maokai in terms of a tank support as well, still very powerful. S tier, there are a few champions I want to talk about. Ornn, as I mentioned in the Baron lane, received a buff. I think Ornn might be one of the most underrated supports. I think as a support, Ornn is very, very strong, has so much playmaking potential, has so much crowd control. Now with the extra damage that you get on top of the tankiness that you get as well, can be a very, very strong carry in solo queue. In terms of other enchanters, I feel like Soraka might be the second best enchanter again. I think with so many of these other enchanters getting nerfed, Yuumi, Lulu, Nami's not that strong at the moment in the current meta. Obviously Seraphine nerfed as well. All these enchanters getting nerfed is just slowly building up the power of the likes of Soraka, which hasn't been touched in quite some times, but this is what happens in the meta. You nerf so many champions and it creeps up some of these champions that have not been touched for quite some time, just because the power of the other champions become less, so these other champions become stronger. So Soraka definitely could be the pick of the patch in the support lane. Other supports, Braum I think is also pretty good. I think the problem with Braum right now though is that you don't really have a keystone rune to run. It's just, you're just not really going to pick anything at all, unfortunately. Karma, Lux, pretty good as carry supports with Zyra as well. I have moved Zyra from A tier up to S tier. As I mentioned in the mid lane, I think Zyra is pretty strong after her buffs. She can be one of the most annoying supports to play against. And also she has quite a lot of utility as well with her knockups, her roots. And also if you build Royal Eyes, that can also get quite annoying. But other tank supports, you know, Thresh, Leona, Nautilus, all these have potential to carry games. A tier, honestly, Yuumi might even be B tier. I mean, I think they completely gutted Yuumi. Maybe I could be over exaggerating the nerfs for Yuumi. That's why I've only moved her from S tier down to A tier. But I honestly feel like the nerfs in general to Yuumi is definitely going to help hurt the cat a lot. And she's not going to be as strong as what she once was, where she was just picked or banned every single game. I don't think she's ban worthy anymore. I don't think Lulu or Yuumi is even ban worthy anymore. I would much rather ban, like, I don't know, Janna instead or something, or even MILIO, to be fair. I'd probably much rather ban MILIO just because the extra range and the cleanse you get from MILIO. I think MILIO is definitely better than Yuumi. We'll have to wait and see, as I mentioned. Other tank supports, which is just not that strong right now, Gragas, Alistar, and Rakan. I mean, Rakan you can build as a tank or as a carry. Just not really opening too much at the moment. Again, the likes of Sona could be pretty underrated this patch. Again, with so many other enchanters getting nerfed, Sona could be moving up because it means that these other supports are not going to be as strong during the laning phase. And if you're against a tank support, someone like a Maokai or an Ornn, which could come back into the meta in terms of, do we want to play tank supports or do we want to play enchanters? I still think enchanters are probably going to be more popular, especially because the lethal tempo changes and just with AD carries in general still being these hyper carries. I can still see a world that you can play someone like Kalista Ornn, for example, or Kalista Nautilus, and still be very, very strong. Center Pike, more carries, supports, not really performing too well. And then the B tier, I think Morgana mid is a lot better than Morgana support. I mean, Morgana support could probably move up as well, but again, I feel like the mid lane is a lot easier just because you can clear the wave. You don't have to worry about stealing minions or anything like that. And you can just look to roam and try and help out from your team. But other supports, Set, Blitzcrank, Galio, Swain, Brand as well. That's pretty much everything for the tier list. Again, a few changes. I think that the patch overall is pretty good. I'm excited to try out the likes of KAYLE and everyone else. If you do want to see me play the patch live, I will probably be streaming here on YouTube or over on my Twitch channel. So if you want to check that out, you can do. I have links down in the description, or you can just go to my YouTube page or Twitch page and see when I'm live. But yeah, it's going to be a fun patch to definitely try out a few new things. And I think the meta is going to be shifting quite a lot when patch 5.3 comes out. There are a lot of big changes coming. So super excited about that one. But I appreciate you all tuning into the video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.